information because each of the tribes, most of what I've studied is Lakota and done work with. I've worked with some other. Oh, where'd you go? I've worked with a few other tribes as well in doing different ceremonies. But probably the most powerful and what really brought me to the medicine was I did a Lawampi ceremony with, at the time, the oldest living Lakota medicine man. And a mentor friend of mine um, was in the final stages of diabetes, and his blood sugars and chemistry were so out of whack that they didn't expect him to live but another day or two. And the ceremony was done in darkness and at night. And at 3:20 in the morning, they released the directions from the healing ceremony. And at 3:40 in the morning, when they took his blood 2 states away, all of his numbers came into alignment. And he was able to live for another 4 months to be able to get his house in order to prepare to die. And
Mm.
that made me believe that was
That,
powerful.
that's beautiful. Yeah.
So, with regard to the totems, it's, I'm a little swayed from the native traditions and how they are now going to interpret them. So, I'm open minded about it. And some of them seem to be pretty spot on with, different aspects of the gene keys. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, from my view, um, the uh, the animals, or I suppose any aspect of spirituality, is more um, enlivened by direct perception, let's just say. And so there's a tendency to want to find out something, about yourself from outside of yourself, which is inevitably destined to fail, right? I mean, it may be amusing to go read your astrology or your gene keys or your animal totem, whatever, but unless there's some direct connection to, um, the energy or the spirit, then it has little value, I would say. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. But I
it,
feel what you're
it's
saying.
it's fodder for the mind and distraction most of the time.
Thus, the world we see around us, right?
Well, let me do for you what I do or practice what I do and see if
I'm
you.
here for you to be your uh, student, your
All
client,
right.
whatever you want to call me.
The 3 5, and you said you're a manifesting generator.
Yeah, that's what I'm told.
Do you know your aura type?
I mean, if it's
Oh, you're a
something listed in
manifesting.
my,
Yeah, you're a manifesting generator. So a generator is your aura type.
oh, is that what that means?
Yeah.
I don't know any of the HD terminology except you know, the basics
Eight.
that are printed out on a PDF file that I was sent.
Well, 80% of the people in the world are generators. Or you're a manifesting generator, so you're a slight variation of that. But they go off of the 3 and the 5 significantly, which um, Gene Keys does as well. 3 and 5 or 3 is your life's work and evolution. 5 is your radiance and purpose. So what the 3 can be a challenge. Well, both the 3 and the 5 can be challenging. I'm a 5-1. The 3 is really about trial and error, and it's about learning through failure. It can be very experiential, and it's a path of discovering within yourself what works and what doesn't work. Usually by figuring out, oh, that didn't work, that didn't work. Let's stop doing that.
Yeah.
Some of the shadow of the 3 is about blaming things outside ourselves and complaining. That has to do with the 55 energy of victimization. And it's one I have to remind myself of many times per day,
Mm-hmm.
being that it's my radiance. The natural state of the 3 is dynamic. Its natural place is joyousness. And it can be a jack of all trades. You function best when you don't have pressure. Does that feel resonant to you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. I definitely understand the pressure and understand, is that the right word? Yeah, but I definitely work best without pressure and tend to shut down, or the avoidance of the 3 comes out sometimes under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Dancing around the thing.
The wound of the 3rd line is shame. And shame is healed with humor, seeing the absurdity of things.
Definitely.
And it's about really about self-honesty. You'll come to energy and experience. Trial and errors are experiences. Experimentation, discovery, all experiences. But the 3 in your life's work is about being a changer. You see what doesn't work, you failed at things, and you go, okay, there's a different way, let's change it. And that is the power of the 3.
Yeah, for sure.
Some of the shadow sides of the 3rd line are uncommitment, uncommitted, pessimistic, and unreliable. So things like integrity are integral for you. When you say, mean what you say and do what you say you'll do. And that will help you get into the energy of the gifts. The gift, as you know, for the 55 is freedom. And for your evolution, which is probably going to be your biggest challenge, is intimacy. The really sharing your heart, your soul, all of what you are honestly, without giving a fuck about how people are judging or perceiving you. And that's a difficult one. I have it as well in my purpose. It can be a challenge.
You hold the 3rd line in that those partners in your unconscious. Is that correct?
This is
55,
conscious.
3.
I'm have the one there, a first
Right,
line.
right. That's right. So you're a 55, 1.
Yeah. What's interesting is you have um, 5 threes in your profile. You
Thought it
have,
was 4 threes.
let's see, 1, 2, 3. Oh, you're correct. 4 threes. You have 3 fives, 3 fours, 1 6, and no line ones at all. So as we move to the beyond the evolution to the radiance, that's where you have a 5th line. And my 5th line is conscious, yours is unconscious. So I'm not quite sure of the same effects. But a 5th line is always projected upon. They want you to be the fixer, the savior, the solve my problems, which you have an outstanding ability to do, but it doesn't always meet with what the other person wants. And when you don't meet the projections of others, then you tend to be burned at the stake. And like, that's how it works for me in the conscious side. I don't know if you experience that the same way in the.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting. It's an interesting metaphor, but also I don't claim to like have memories of past lives or anything, but there's a sense of I think with many sort of light workers of holding a fear around this type of you know uh, abuse. But yeah, you could say that I have experienced that in my relationships.
Powering on.
I mean, I could describe it to you, but
Powering on. Ready to pair.
I'll just keep listening for a bit. I'm really interested in your process.
Sorry about that. I have an external speaker so that I can hear you well, and for some reason, whenever I use Zoom, it powers off after so many minutes.
Oh. Would you mind pausing for like 2 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, I'm just gonna empty my bladder.
Hey, you got a tree right there.
Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I was just drinking tea while I did my practices and having just kind of a a partial fast, letting my digestion finish from the weekend. It seemed to be needing some more time. So
What was hilarious from a visual standpoint, because it looked like you walked into and disappeared into the tree.
yeah, I've heard that. It's like I can practice magic on Zoom, right?
Exactly.
Part of my humor, you know.
Exactly.
Give everybody a good laugh.
Humor is the absolute best medicine. Okay, back to what the five is in your radiance and purpose. Um, Beware, just be as aware of projections from others as you can. Some may be positive, some may be negative. Um,
Yeah, I mean, my primary area of noticing is in my long-term one-on-one relationship,
mhm.
and so it's in that way it's been very instructive for me, if not always easy.
You
With
know
a
what? I've never really looked at those in that way. That's something that I really need to do.
well, because I have this 3-5, and it's based in intimacy and relationships. And it's about experiential, and then I'm
Exactly.
married to a 2-4, and I don't, I can't, like, I don't have the same knowledge or experience you have with this type of a line reading, but it's really, really, really interesting that when I opened up my full moon call this on Friday, I did it Friday and Saturday morning, and a woman showed up who's been coming for years and was describing some difficulty with her husband, and then it came out that she's a 2-4 and he's a 3-5. So it was almost like, and then another guy showed up. It was almost like a family therapy session where nobody was really the leader, or we were all sort of getting what we needed out of it and
Oh,
hearing
how
what we needed to
awesome.
hear. But it was like, in relation to what you're saying about this projection thing, like she was describing from her point of view how when she felt upset,
Hmm.
she really just needed to be heard, listened to, possibly touched, a physical touch or embrace. And the tendency that I also hold, and I could really empathize for her husband, of the fixer, is to want to offer some helpful, dare I say it, therapeutic advice, which immediately creates, you know, usually,
Is
I should say, usually creates an argument.
right.
And it's really interesting. It was really interesting to, because it's not like the first time I've noticed it, but to hear it sort of played out with another person was really interesting.
Hmm.
So
Well, the
go ahead.
best solution for fifth lines is simple and practical. The guilt there within the fifth line is, or the wound within the fifth line is guilt,
Right.
and that is healed with forgiveness.
Yeah.
Most of that is towards self. Yes, we have to forgive others' trespasses, but mostly we have to forgive ourselves because we will well, let me take that personally. I react to projections in a variety of different ways. And then I
Hmm.
want to say it's your fault. You made me feel this way, where that is not the case. I chose to feel that way and react.
Right. But when it happens quickly, it appears to be that way. And so I'll
Right.
just briefly describe, because the really interesting thing I found, my wife is not interested in the gene keys, but from observing her profile, because she carries the city of forgiveness in her evolution. And so
Uh,
probably the best I can hope for is acceptance. Yes, forgiveness. Um, as you say, it's not, the forgiveness isn't, on one level, it can come from another person forgiving you, but it's
right.
internal. And on top of it, because I hear this word come up all the time, and we always use it, right, in terms of our emotions reaction. And she carries the shadow 3 different times in life work, in Pearl, and in IQ. She carries that 49th gene key. And so it's really, we've gone through a lot of, reaction
And trial
and
and error, I would imagine.
trial and error. And even the word failure begins to sort of gradually become lighter and softer as I see the value of the experience, right? Because I'm an experiencer, and
That's self-forgiveness.
it is, and self acceptance, right? Which is another key of the whole Gene Keys approach. Allow it first of all,
Hmm.
then accept it, and then embrace it. And so, yeah, I really feel that playing out, in the course of my life, and sometimes in the course of just the day. The kid can go take a dive in there and then back up and then, ride the waves.
And your purpose in life as well as in relationship, I don't know what the key is, but it does have to do with the frequency of voice. The 5th line is the voice and
Mm-hmm.
speak. Um, but is it self-assurance?
Yes, the
That's your
20th
gift
gene
there?
key.
Um, your attractor field. Have you done the Venus sequence?
Oh yeah, I've done the Venus sequence many times.
Okay. From what attracts people to you is the 4th line, which is a networker. Um, and in that position, the gift is graciousness. So grace is the Siddhic level that is the attractive piece of you, which is a fantastic place for that to settle. The wound is rejection, which is healed with gentleness, self-gentleness, and being of service. You have the networkedness of tendrils that reach out in all different directions and connections, and it's being of service within that network. Does that resonate?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And of course, it's one of the reasons I view my wife as a teacher, because she holds that 4th line unconscious. But it was really so interesting. I may have shared this with you in one of the groups, but right near the beginning of the Pearl, and I had started that small group kind of around intimacy, the small men's group. And the vision I was getting was actually walking through the Venus sequence, supporting the Pearl. But the dream I had was, it's really hard to describe dreams that are nonverbal, but I went through like a horrific crash and burn of my last career in 2019 prior to the lockdown. So I had already resigned from teaching. Right, it was one of those line 3 things, like pattern. Okay, I know this pattern. I know this is about to end, but I still had to go through hell. There was suicide of a previous student, and being in the classroom with students who had literally seen none of them really had dads, but saw their father figure shot in front of them by the police because he was high on meth. So I was like juggling all this trauma, right? Had just moved back from Alaska. My wife was having 2 to 3 day migraines like every week.
Oh, really?
every 10 days she would get another one. And I was basically sleeping 3 hours a night and just trying to get through it. And why do I mention this? Because the dream I had, my fourth lines were like, it was like an energetic massage. It was like healing all that.
Hmm.
And I didn't really get words to it or anything. But after I woke up from the dream, I realized that the way, like, my mantra for it is gracious magnetic expansion, because those are my fourth line gifts.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to share that with you because it's so interesting how the subconscious sometimes speaks non-verbally, or I suppose it was like an energetic dream. It was just like,
Hmm.
because it's been 2 years now and I'm still working on, healing the nervous system, essentially. If there's anything that's close to a nervous breakdown, uh, I was close to it, because I was, in many ways, I have practices to stay grounded and keep going, and I have a lot of endurance, but I was uh, having pains in the body, even when I was sleeping, difficulty walking upstairs, things like that, that I'm too young for that. I'm getting
How,
on,
how
but
old are you, David?
I'm 61. I just turned 61.
Oh, okay. I
And
thought you were
so
younger.
my determination, yeah, I have, from my mom's side, I sort of have a young aspect or something, but it's also comes from the sort of wild and crazy side that's sort of a three-line thing, maybe, too.
Yeah.
And so I determined to become regular in my practices, including Qigong. I've expanded my Qigong a lot. Also, my meditation practice and my just getting back to the basics, in order that I can be healthier by the time I get to be 70, or die trying.
Yeah.
That's my humor.
Die trying to be healthy. I think that should be a slogan on a bumper sticker. But hey,
uh,
ounce,
Powering on.
squeeze some more tea, please. Okay, let's.
Powering on.
I'm not going to go a
Ready to
lot
pair.
into the Venus. 3, 4, 5, and a 4. So the third line in your IQ is the flexible mind. Initiative is the um, gift, but the aspect of the flexible mind can be invasive. Means you can kind of figure out other people's thought and emotional patterns. The wound there of the 3 is shame, and that wounding, you have 1, 2, 3. I thought 1, 2, 3, 4 areas where humor is the most beneficial aspect of healing.
mm, yeah, I've contemplated that it's all my trigger points as well. Like, all my trigger points could be,
Hmm.
they could trigger the shame, or they could trigger the laughter, or maybe
Right.
both simultaneously.
I I've had, and I don't know if other people have this experience, but when I'm an emotional projector and the channel of emotion, and I can ground vast amounts of other people's emotions, or when mine come up, they're usually very intense. And the sobbing, I switch between sobbing and laughter, and in the body, they feel identical.
Hmm. I
It's
remember when I was about probably 18, I think I was going off to be an exchange student, and among the wild and crazy things that I've done, my roommate had, hits of acid. Like we took hits of acid before we got on the, not before we got on the plane, but the night before. And I remember that experience of laughing until you cry and then crying until you laugh from that altered state. Um, I understand what you're saying.
and I recently had that with an ayahuasca weekend that there were just sobs and sobs and sobs, but my body felt nothing. There was no, I wasn't crying, but I was bawling. It,
Mm,
and
some kind
that
of a
was,
emotional cleansing, probably, huh?
oh, absolutely. The whole thing was all about release for me. There was all the stuff I thought it was going to be was none of that. It was
Yeah,
just all about releasing.
I had that experience in the first month of the Pearl. I went to one of Momo's dance waves, and the dance wave was actually on the based on the 43rd gene key, which is where my wife has her radiance. Like we have these programming partner, or not programming partners. We have the codon rings together in all of our activations. So here we
Mm,
are, 43, 34, and it was, what triggered it was a song, because she uses um, these soundtracks, for the dance and the movement and so on. And it was that old Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young song called "Our House." So it brought us this image of this sort of dream that we held and continue to hold, that is as yet unfulfilled, and it triggered that just a complete emotional release. It was like a cleansing, sobbing, um, and so I was aware that it was a healing going on, and that it was just the beginning or a continuation, probably, of a whole lifetime of our
mhm.
karmic um, pattern. But I understand what you're saying, because the fourth line, of course, is my core wound too.
That's what I was just looking at. What is the shadow of your you have the
It's the
fourth line.
immaturity through expansion into superabundance.
Mm, yeah, that's childhood stuff that's been,
Well, and then yeah, another gift that I feel from the Venus, like when I moved from you're just kind of going through. You said it was a fourth line to or excuse me, a third line to a fourth line. But when I have felt into those shadows, which are agitation into dullness, it's like a direct parallel to the sort of imprinting of being, incarnated into the womb of a bipolar mother. Like
mm,
my mom was like manic depressive, they called it back in the day, right?
right.
And so she'd had a son, well, my brother older than me, and she was in this vast depression when all of a sudden she realized, I think, she was having another kid, and she was giving up her career and education. And anyhow, not to go into too many details, I recognized that in myself, in the framework of the agitation and the dullness. The way
Mhm.
that I can trigger into um, the unsteady state unless I channel that energy into an initiative, right? Which is the gift, of course, the
Mhm.
initiative. In which case, it can be, it can be massaged into a more of a magnetic, uh, the eternally flowering spring is my EQ. That's why I'm happiest sitting under a tree, right?
Exactly. I'd love to be sitting under a tree.
So
Well,
just
again, as the core it, in the vocation versus the core is guilt, and it's back to forgiveness. So forgiveness. There's a lot of shame and forgiveness throughout your whole thing. I, I'm sorry, did I say guilt or did I say shame? They're pretty close, but
I mean, you know what? It seems like there's a certain fluidity to um, my profile. I'll say maybe to anybody's profile, but maybe that's my Pisces speaking. But so that yeah, it can move between. I mean, my core wound is actually the constriction of the heart, right? Um, but it could be triggered by someone's guilt. You know, my wife carries the fifth line uh, in the core, and interestingly, the guy I've had a few sort of like practice readings like this, and the guys that keep showing up seem to be carrying the fifth line, the male guilt, you know.
yeah,
And
I don't carry a whole bunch of that, so
yeah,
because I'm so on the fringe, so I
yeah.
don't get a lot of that
But in
personally.
any case, it's yeah, it's learning to be gentle is a definitely an art, part of the art of contemplation,
Absolutely.
art of living.
Been with my, I don't know what to call them, alternative relationship, have been going through the art of forgiveness, just slowly, a little bit day by day, which has been great for me to keep practicing as well as to guide someone else in it is pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when we went into the brand, you know, and I opened up my um, Kindle version of the Gene Keys, and I was going to read the 55th Gene Key, and I
It's
still haven't
huge.
done it. I still haven't
It's
gotten to it. I've read it multiple times, but this time I didn't get to read it yet because when I opened it up, I was sitting on the fourth Gene Key, which is my wife's evolution, but it was right there where on the section on um, like what's the word? It's like um, the fear. It's like a fierce forgiveness. It's like a relentless forgiveness. Like there's some word he uses. I might not be getting it right, but it reminds me of Ram Dass wrote a book about fierce grace. Like
wow.
it's like the forgiveness that move. It's like the forgiveness of the seven sacred seals, let's say, that moves down through the genome and just clears things out or something like that. And so I thought it was such interesting timing. So the four, um, just as an archetype, as a number, as a
Hmm.
as a stability is, and I mean it's the number of the prime gifts, for example, um, is an important part of that for me. Just remaining grounded amidst the crash of breaking worlds, let's say.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, I don't need to go off on a ramble. I can
Well,
easily do this.
I hadn't had a lot of time to look at the numbers of the pearl. Um,
Well, I've had about 4 months recently, so
yeah.
um,
Well, the pieces that I pulled out of it, and then you can expand on it. You have two threes there within your pearl. Your vocation is the four, and the six was really the piece that stood out to me. That, you know, as those three pieces come together, those two threes and the four, you're the overseer. You can see the vision. That is what the pearl is from the sixth line perspective. And
Mhm.
that's not always, I only have one sixth line, and it's in my core wound and vocation. So, and it's like, well, I don't really do anything. I can see it. I can, I can envision it, but I'm not really to do anything about it. It's just maybe holding the vision. And I've had
Yeah.
that with a project. I foresee a project that could turn around a small city within Detroit. It's called Highland Park, using the most historic building on the planet, Henry Ford's original Model T plant, which initiated the whole Industrial Revolution. It's the first automated car plant ever. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just sitting there doing nothing.
Wow.
And it's like, it could have such amazing potential from, wealthy um, lofts to helping homeless people transition back into, functioning society. It's just, the interesting thing was I just met someone who was a passenger in my car who was talking about, she deals with these huge investors, and one of the people is like 50 million is the lowest amount of money we'll invest into a project. We'd
Oh,
like to
wow.
go up to a half billion. I'm like, I'm just supposed to hold the vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I got her card, of course.
Yeah.
but but that's kind of an example of that. I've been holding that vision for 10 years, and it just will be what it will be. I'm not the one to make it happen, but I may have some influence or initiation or something else involved in it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
your gift there is, what is it?
Inspiration.
Okay. I
Yeah.
don't need to say anything else.
Yeah. It's sort of like it is sort of like like, well, like first seeing it there in my profile, it's just like this lofty, what the hell is that? But it's like the closer I get to it, the more obvious it is,
Mhm.
because
Powering on.
it's also this, the city of sanctity.
Hold just a second.
Yeah.
Powering on. Ready to pair.
Okay.
The sanctity of nature, is the city in line. And so I've, um, I mean, there's several aspects that it's been, helping me to envision what, what the heck I'm supposed to do with the two words that I was given sort of in meditation, which were earth service. This is 20 some years ago, before I went through some other stuff, came out of a healing, I was attempting sort of to bring it into a heart-based business right the 2 years before I met up with the Gene Keys. I'd been writing these animal messages, receiving and writing these animal messages, and I received a series of 4 animal messages that I began to realize they weren't just for me, right?
Mhm.
They contained a seed of something bigger. And so, I mean, it's kind of like it's kind of humorous, actually, from the standpoint of my brand, to think about, um, how I created this website, Earth Service, subtitled "Dedicated to Awakening the Heart's Natural Love."
Mhm.
as a fourth line wounder, the trigger point in awakening, and yet, you know, to embark upon a business so like intertwined with the spiritual path immediately brings up all of your crap, right? And
Of
so
course.
there was crap to go through, and I've been going through it. But I feel like there's sort of like this promise of the sixth line, and it's come up through other types of you know, readings in my life, that the last chapter is the best, right? So it takes a lot of patience
Mhm.
and plenty of trial and error, like you say. But it's the dream that won't give, you know, the dream that is dreaming me that won't let me stop, essentially. And actually, the other morning when I went to journal, I wrote a poem that just came out, starting with the question, "Are you a medicine dreamer?" And I shared it with one of my full moon groups. But I guess I relate that to this discussion about the pearl, because there's a certain service that I'll say I do, that I'm not the only one, but many of us do, which is simply like dreaming the new world into existence, imagining the possibility that, you know, human beings could live in peace, for example, is like easy to discount as some sort of, you know, new age fantasy. But when you feel it in your bones, it's like, really? We don't really have to be living in chaos here. So yeah, it's an interesting path. Once I had an Akashic record reading from someone who had their own layers of terminology and everything, and her label for me was a blueprint originator. And the task of a blueprint originator is, there's no task, just you're just there. Others take the blueprint, right, and, you know, do the construction or whatever.
That sounds like the same as visionary and overseer.
Yeah, it's the same. It's sort of like a reminder of, and then even when I was sort of trying to integrate this pearl, I got this vision of the spiral dance of remembering, was the words I got.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is like constantly being reminded of what it is on some level I already know. I already think I know, but then I keep coming back around the spiral. Like, oh wait, you forgot again. Okay.
Well, it's less about knowing and more about it.
Well, knowing is the dilemma of the 61st.
Right. I'm
You
trying
know.
to think of a different word, but it's like feeling it in your body. It's beyond knowing. It's
Yeah, and I've described it as, like in the poem, it got described again as, I know that I know that I know. Like, so
right.
it's the layers of, and very much relates to this, you know, the belly. I guess you could say the belly knowing, right? The gut knowing,
Well,
or
that's
the not even, not like you say, the not even needing to know, just the being of, closer to the essence of the.
And when a medicine person gave me my native name, it was Spiraling Fox. She said she saw this big spiral. Many times it's going down. However, occasionally I get it to spiral up. So
That's
I
so interesting. It's so interesting that we finally connected now too, because maybe I've described my um, new moon ritual where I choose an animal for the mother and an animal for the father, and then one comes up for the child, because the fox is here for the mother, the divine mother, this cycle.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And it was interesting the way it happened too, because the first thing on that new moon, when I do that, before I had chosen those animals, I was connecting with a person who was had been in the Pearl for the first time and had some confusion and wanted to connect with somebody. And so well, she was actually in Romania and she was experiencing some, um, you know, emotions and things from all of a sudden there's a war over the border.
Yeah.
And so long story short, I chose balance animals for her, and the fox came up for the mother. And then a couple hours later, the fox came up in the hole. I mean, I don't necessarily do this reading for myself. It is for myself, obviously, because I do it. But it seems like it's more of an archetypal energy. And then the other interesting synchronicity of her reading was that she carries a life work of conflict through diplomacy to peace, you know, with the programming partner of turbulence to compassion to humanity. And so I just felt like it was just such a beautiful way for the universe to sort of gently ease me into, well, what would be the value of having a one-on-one connection with somebody, right? Well, probably just showing up and being human and you know, experiencing a little more peace. But I would love to also reciprocate if you're open to that at some point, or it feels right for you.
Yeah, I love that.
And to
How
see
does
where it goes.
this, what I presented, come across for you?
I love that the way you've created it to a simple and practical kind of tool presentation. I mean, that's probably sort of the gifts of your profile, of having the 5 and the 1. It's very grounded, right?
And my attraction field is simplicity. It's the gift. So
Oh, yeah,
I tried to bridge this to a lot of people that have no gene key knowledge at all. So
mm-hmm.
it's to give them something that's digestible and can be relatable, but not try to just eat an
Yeah,
elephant in 10 minutes.
that's interesting. Yeah, and so do you generally give them a reading of all the lines, or just the prime hit lines? Look at your cat having fun.
Knocked a candle off the table.
Well,
Oh well.
I mean, we can continue this. I know I've already taken an hour or more of your time, but yeah, I like the simplicity of it. The way where I've been going with it in my experimental way is I was offering core awareness sessions based on animal readings, and what I've been doing is integrating that with the activation, not even going, I mean, the conversation can go wherever it wants, when it goes there, but just focusing on on the pathway of challenge, essentially. So I like it to be something I could, like you're saying, that somebody that has no knowledge of gene keys, it could just be something valuable that introduces them, it sparks their curiosity, and they want more, than fine. But I really like the the archetype of the activation sequence in the sense that, you know, the challenge, the breakthrough, and the core stability is a basic, and it also has a parallel in the four animals that came to me. So I won't go into the detail of that right now, but essentially the animals, the keywords are be present, be connected, be in action, let go. Based on the whale, the spider, the deer, and the swan. So it was so interesting to me when I started to go into the Venus sequence too, that in terms of, like, you asked, well, what are they going to do with these animal totems, right? But in the place of, I can really see it in the purpose to the attractor field.
Yeah.
With, anyway, part of I think part of just relaxing into contemplation is this experience of all of a sudden everything is synchronistic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's sort of more like, I've sort of come to feel it like, well, actually, life is synchronistic. It's the other side of it that we're experiencing, the constriction shadow side that thinks it's not, right? So anyhow, I felt like your reading is right on, and a really nice introductory sort of view of, sort of these archetypal patterns.
It's bite size. I like to think of it as.
What did you say? Oh, bite size. Yeah. Well, see that, but that's